was always education, books first. Like I couldn't do the baseball, basketball, football, and track if I didn't have the grades. Like, bro, I have an old report card. I was going through some old stuff cleaning up, and I have an old report card, and I legit have like all A's across that joint, and I have one B. And I remember my mom saying, "Why'd you get the B?" And I'm like, "Do you not see all these other A's, woman?" And so the week of the Wilson game, I went to a party out and ran into some trouble, and I ended up having a deep thigh bruise, and it made me miss the Wilson game.
You rewrite the record books at Bucknell, starting as a freshman, great year. The numbers that you put up are, they're video game like. I think, if I'm correct, by the time you left Bucknell, you were within range of breaking the 1AA rushing record all time.
Yeah, I was. Shoot, man. That as we chatted, that first offer came from Penn State. Well, the first interest letter came from Penn State. And so I was excited. I was like, wow, somebody does believe in me. I can play ball at this level.
All right, we're back with one more down. Today we're expanding outside of our city parameters and getting over across the Trumbull County line to talk to one of their all-time greats, Rich Lemon. Rich Lemon was a dynamic tailback, safety kick returner, and part-time receiver. He was a guy that could do it all, multifaceted, multi-talented. Went on to do great things at the college level with Bucknell University. And it's my pleasure to get a chance to speak with this guy after almost 30 years. We were competitors on the field, always respected everything this guy brought to the game. And am happy to get a chance to speak with him today and pick his brain about his trajectory and what he's doing these days. So welcome to One More Down, Rich.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Honored that you would extend the invitation to me to share some of our stories, the path that we've taken through, you just said 30 years. We've got our 30-year reunion this summer. It's been a long journey. I'm so excited to just chop it up with you and tell my story, wherever it goes. So the pleasure's all mine, and thankful that you reached out the other week, and happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure some of my guys, my ex-teammates and things of that nature, when they get a gander at this, them competitive juices will probably be flowing, and they'll expand the stories of exploits that probably never happened. But that's just what you're entitled to as we age. You get to tell it your way, put a little bit of extra sprinkle on top of it. But a man such as yourself, there's no extra ingredients even needed. To get started, we like to kind of get a feel for, your experience growing up and your background, family dynamics. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Proud of my upbringing, not so much as a youngin because you're worried about your reputation and everything and trying to solidify your place in the economy. But proud youngest of five from a single parent household, 4 boys and a girl. My mom just did it on her own. And so, that's the foundation of who I am and where I come from. I'm the youngest of 5, as I mentioned. My brothers are 13, 12, and 10 years older than me, and my sister is 6. And so I've always been, like when you look at me and the way that I approached, anything in life, not just on the gridiron, I approach it with a chip on my shoulder because as trying to hang out with my older brothers or my older sister, they were like, "You're too small," or "No, you're too young," and I couldn't do it. And so I was always trying to prove that I belong. And so whether it was on the playground or in the classroom, because in school growing up where I grew up, like I grew up on the South Side. It wasn't the South Side of Youngstown, it's the South Side of Niles. But I'd always tell people on the South Side, in elementary school, I was the only African American in the school, not the classroom. Classrooms have 20, 25 kids. I was the only African American in school, K through 6. And so showing that I belonged in that classroom as well, and then going out on the playground and showing what I could do. So whether it was socially, academically, athletically, I was raised to, put my stamp and leave my footprints, so I can, let people know that I was there and I was going to be there and remain there.
Now you spoke to me the other night, during our pre-conversation, and you kind of indicated that the family originally was living in Warren, and then your mom made that decision to give you and your younger sibling, or I'm sorry, your sister, a different opportunity than what the older siblings had.
Yeah, yeah. Grew up. I have memories probably till like 3 or 4 years old. Off of Todd Avenue, there's a apartment complex called Hampshire Houses, and so I lived in a Hampshire house. And at that point, my brothers were in high school, and so when I was 5 years old, we moved over to the south side of Niles. And my brother, one of my brothers, or actually both of them, were still in high school, and they went to Warren Western Reserve. So back in the day, there was Harding and there was Reserve before they combined in like 90, 91. And so those two, because we went to Niles, those two had cars and they drove. And so they still drove from Niles to Warren. And they graduated from Reserve. Whereas my brother, that's 10 years older than me, the middle child, and my sister, my brother that's 10 years older than me was like a sophomore. And so he went to Niles his last 3 years, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. I want to say my sister was like seventh grade, because she was 6 years older than me. So I was probably kindergarten. She was in seventh grade. And so she did junior high school and high school. And I did my entire education through Now City Schools. And so, it was just something that as I think about my path and my journey and the vision that my mom had, for us to realize, not that Warren is a bad thing, but the opportunities weren't as plentiful. And so for her to recognize that she wasn't excited about the opportunities my older brothers were getting, and then making that transition into Niles to set, myself up, my sister, and my middle brother up. I mean, we're all successful in life. We're all doing relatively well. But the path that my mom put me on allowed me to build relationships, network with a different community, and to adapt. Because as we look at this world, like the world isn't going to be predominantly Black. We know that the world is a very diverse mixing pot. And so that exposure that I had prepared me to go to a college like Bucknell, because Bucknell's enrollment at the time was probably 3,600 students. And I would dare to say less than 150 were Black. And so where we had, most of us were athletes, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, track. When I started having relationships with some of the other athletes, they would ask me how I was making the transition so easily. Well, that was my upbringing. Nothing was different from me, but some of the brothers that were from Georgia and Florida, they struggled because they were coming from communities like a Youngstown and the Warren, and it's a little different. And so it hit different for them. But my transition, so for my mom to see that at that time, she's just a high school graduate. And for her to have that vision, like I'm super proud to share that story, super proud of the foundation that my mom gave me and the, quote unquote advantage that she gave me of others that grew up in a similar situation as us.
So doing, I guess when you're doing your whole school career in that environment and you're the only Black guy in most situations, is that, if you can think back early on, are there any struggles with that, or is it just that's all in terms of schooling?
Lots of struggles because, I grew up in Warren in regards to my first 4 years. Well, I say five because we start kindergarten at 5 years old. So, from 0 to 5. And so all of my friends look like me. And so when I show up in kindergarten, I'm looking for dudes and young ladies that look like me, and nobody looks like me. And so as I started having, candid conversations at a young age, as candid as you can be as a kid, which kids are actually the most candid human beings on the earth. And so having those conversations with my mom, you sit down, and whether it's dinner time or snack time, and she's asking how my day went, And, regardless of what I dealt with in the classroom or on the playground, she let me know, like, I'm human, like, we're all the same. And, don't let the difference of your skin color change the way. And if people are treating me differently and being intimidated because I look different, she instilled in me to intimidate them in the classroom with my brain. And so she was like, give them more of a reason, to be fearful of you. Don't have them be fearful of you because of your attitude or the way that you talk or the way that you dress or you don't dress. She just instilled in me, outperform. And so that's where that center of excellence comes from, is I want to be the best at everything I do, no matter what it is, whether it's in the classroom, on the field. Like when I bought my first house, I wanted to have the best yard in the freaking subdivision. And so I'm competing with the dude next door, like, oh, you cutting your grass? Man, it's 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. I'm gonna cut my grass too. Fire that baby up and get it moving. And so that's just something mom instilled in me in regards to, you know, don't allow someone to make you uncomfortable. Make them uncomfortable by what you bring to the table. And if they're ready for you, they'll remain at that table. If they're not, they'll leave. And then those are the people that we don't want in our circles, that will, expand our network and establish relationships with.
So it sounds like, mom is giving you uh, tools of how to be resilient,
Yeah.
and that's a big indicator of parents of our generation. Like you touched on it. You said mom was a high school graduate, but when you compare that in comparison to what it means to get a high school education today, in my opinion, high school and public school is watered down to the point where it's almost just a holding pen.
Yeah.
And the high school experience that our parents and their parents went through, it prepared you more for what to do in the real world. At 18, you're an adult. You have to
Yeah.
be ready
Yeah.
to compete. And some of that wisdom that she imparts to you in that situation, is there's a lot of class in it, because, a lot of people would uh, teach their child, well, if somebody's doing this to you, you make sure you do this back to them, and she's teaching you how to outthink people, and not even worry about whether they're accepting you or not, but just making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do to advance yourself. So that there's a lot of forethought and intention in how she instructed you. And obviously, she knew what she was doing, because you've made it to points where others would have gotten gobbled up.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And well, I won't say you're right, because everyone has an opinion, but I agree with you that back then, you were more prepared for life, because the curriculum was not, as you're saying, watered down. And so like my mom was prepared for life with her high school diploma, and prepared her children for life. And, no knock on, no troublemakers in the family. I'm sure some of my siblings probably played around with the recreational use, but no addictions in the family, no felonies. So, and everybody's doing really, really well, have careers. Actually, one brother, well, two brothers are retired. One retired from the military and kept working, because, he retired at 42. Who gets to retire at 42? You know what I mean? And then he put another 20 some years in with the DOD, and he's about to retire. And the other brother worked at Trumbull Correctional Institute, and he's retired, but he's working with like Warren City Schools now. So he's still in the area. And my oldest brother, he's not doing so well. Like, he's not aging as gracefully as some of the others that are in their 60s. And my sister's actually down here from me. She actually lives like 10 minutes away. She bought her first house. And I'm like, you live in my neighborhood. Like, why are you so close? I don't need you to be this close. And so we have a good time as siblings.
You gotta keep an eye on baby bro,
Yeah,
report back,
I'm grown now. What you talking about?
Now, what is that early entryway into athletics for you, and where are your athletic influences built as a youth?
Oh man, back in the day, it was all playground and watching TV. Like my favorite team is Cowboys, And so watching Tony Dorsett back in the day, Earl Campbell, I'm a little fella, but Earl Campbell was my all-time favorite running back. Like I just loved the way that dude get the ball and go. And so just watching them and wanting to go outside and do what they did with all the neighborhood friends. But my oldest brother, essentially taught me how to be an athlete, like at a very young age. I mean, you got to remember, he's 13 years older than me. So I've got, darn near a man teaching me how to play a child's game. And so we'd go on the playground. He taught me how to throw a football. He taught me how to hold a football, taught me how to shoot a basketball, taught me how to dribble. Like everything was through him. But back then we played outside. So all the neighborhood kids, I'm young. And so I played with all the older kids. So when I was 7, 8 years old, I was playing with the 11, 12-year-olds. And, we didn't have pads. Like we was playing, like we were hitting, like, and they didn't care. And if I played with my brother, he would tell me if I started crying, I had to go home. And so I had to man up essentially. And so just playing out there with the kids, and then Niles Little Red Dragons started their team when we were 8 years old. And some of the neighborhood kids that lived in the apartment complex I grew up in, and others that were like right down the street that came to the neighborhood because we had like a playground. And I thought it was a huge field, but when I go home now, I'm like, wow, we played 8-on-8 out here. Like this is crazy. And so my mom was one of those, you're too small. I'm not going to let you play that game. I don't want you to get hurt. But when those older kids that were 4 and 5 years older than me, they told her, they were like, Mrs. Lemon, you've got to let him play. He's really good. Like, and she was like, stop it. He's not that good. And they're like, no, Mrs. Lemon, your son is tough. Like he's really good. And you got to remember, he's going to be playing with kids his age. So if he's doing it against us, he should be able to do it against them. And so and I just learned, because I shared with my brother that's still in Ohio, that you and I were going to be chatting. And he told me that one of the neighborhood cops that my mom worked with, she worked at the Niles police station. He told her, because he lived in the apartment that oversaw the playground. And he said, Barb, like, I watch Richard every day. Like, you need to let him play. And I just learned this. And so I need to thank Mr. Wilson, Rick Wilson. I think his brother was a detective. I don't remember if he was a detective or not. But I'll make sure that once we finish this, I'll share it to him, because I'm appreciative, because my mom wasn't going to let me play. I wouldn't have liked it then, but I'd love it now. I probably would have played like tennis or golf or something. But Mr. Wilson told me, he's like, Barb, you need to let Richard play. I watch him every day. He can play. And he's a tough little kid. And so that's where it all started, 8 years old. And at Little Red Dragons, we only had 11 kids. And so every one of us played both ways. And I was the quarterback. That's the picture that you're going to show. When I was wearing number 20, because I liked Billy Sims back in the day. I used to follow everybody. And so some of the older, more experienced kids took the good numbers, the 34, Walter Payton, 33, Tony Dorsett. And so I was like, well, shoot, Billy Sims, that dude, I'll take number 20. And then they put me at QB, and I was like, quarterbacks don't wear 20? Like, what? And so that's where it began, Little Red Dragons, but first on the playground, then of course learning the foundation from my big brother that tries to take credit and tell me he's still better than me, he can beat me running, all that craziness. And he's the biggest of us. He's probably in his prime before he got sick, probably like 6'1", 240. And I used to tell him, like, man, if I got just a little bit of what you got, like, just give me some of
it. but I guess listening to you, that environment of competition and testing yourself against older guys, that is just part of our generation, because there wasn't really a cutoff line before a certain age, at least, where, if you're in the neighborhood, you're just intermixing with everybody who's out there. And if you dare step out in the middle of a rough and tumble game, or, pickup football game, it's like, okay, you can play, but we're not going to dial it down for you. You're going to have to raise your level up to us. So, I can certainly relate to that. When you start making your way into those upper levels, junior high, high school, what is your plan, and what is your vision for yourself as you start to enter those school feeder programs?
Well, it was all mom's plan, essentially, because, you know, as we're alluding to back then, it was okay to go to high school, get a high school diploma, and just hit the workforce because you're more prepared. And so as our generation started developing, there are, you know, some of our elders that went to college, but not a vast majority. And so for my family, my immediate family, I was first generation college kid. Like, and that was mom's plan. That was her goal. And it started with her moving to Niles and giving me a little more exposure, not just socially and academically, just overall, give me that exposure so I can hit that plan. So her plan was always education, books first. Like I couldn't do the baseball, basketball, football, and track if I didn't have the grades. Like, bro, I have an old report card. I was going through some old stuff, cleaning up, and I have an old report card, and I legit have like all A's across that joint, and I have one B. And I remember my mom saying, "Why'd you get the B?" And I'm like, "Do you not see all these other A's, woman?" Of course, I didn't say that to her because my mom was a lefty. She'd have gave it to me. But it's like, do you not see all these A's? It's like 30 A's on this joint because you got your first, second, third, fourth quarters. And it's like, Mom, I got a lot of A's. Why'd you get the B? And so she was always not necessarily perfection, but giving your best and letting your best show it. And that meant 90 back then it was 94% or higher. And so that's where it came from. And then as in junior high, I had to keep that up. And then in high school, I had to keep that up. I wasn't even, I wanted to play football, but mom's goal was you need to go to college. And I liked school, but as I got more into school and we started taking those trigonometries and advanced physics and advanced chem and calculus, like, man, this ain't fun. Like, when am I ever going to use this? Like, when does, you know, a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Like, in whose world? Because when I go and they say that milk back then was $2.99, like, I'm gonna give you $3. There's nothing to figure out. 3 minus $2.99 is 1 cent. Give me my penny so I can keep it moving. But mom had a plan, and it was my responsibility not to let her down. And I take a lot of pride in that, and trying to make mom proud. She passed right after Bucknell, right after I graduated in '97. But I still am moving like she's right next to me because I know that she's still right here. And it's crazy because when I talk trash about my mom, like when we tell stories and I'm talking trash, I know she's gonna repay me because I bump my knee. Like when I get up, I'm probably gonna bump my knee on this desk. I'm like, dang, mom, like you ain't have to do me like that. I was just having a good time with my man from Cheney.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about that high school career going through Niles. Certainly, you know, Niles has a lot of tradition and history in its past with some of the great teams of the '60s. They've had more recent success with the playoff era throughout some of the late '90s, early 2000s. Put together some really great teams, but when we go back to our time period, which would have been the fall of '89 through the spring of '93, you know, I remember when we came over as sophomores and played against you guys. That was, you know, me and my subset of friends, first year getting to play athletics period at Cheney because we took racial balance transfers to go over to that side of town. So that caused you to forfeit your whole first year of athletics if you were transitioning to another school outside of your home school. So we didn't play freshman football or anything like that. But I remember you being out there as a varsity player when, you know, me and my guys, except for Patton, were JV guys, you know, and the landscape of your team, you know, you're one of the only, if not just a handful of black guys out there. So, you know, you were easy to spot right away. And it was, as far as stature, size, dimensions, you know, you're looking at this guy and you're going like, man, this guy's out there starting, like what's going on, you know? So, you know, fast forward, we come back 2 years later to meet you guys, and you know, you're a whole different monster from that first you know, meeting to that next meeting. And of course, both schools have gone through their transitions and trajectories. We've gotten a lot better from 90 to 92, but the reputation preceded you before we even met on the field. It's like we pop on the film, we're making our game plan for the week, and that's all you hear. Hey, 24, 24, 24, 11. You got to keep this guy in check. He'll embarrass you. So there was that build up to the competition of us meeting head to head on the field. But I want to get your perspective of what your experience was like playing against your annual competition, and then just what you thought about some of the different places and arenas that you guys got to compete in.
Yeah. When I think about sophomore year, I think about, preseason and looking at, the guys, the upperclassmen that were ahead of me. We ran that wing T back then. So there's a lot of opportunity to play because you've got a ton of running backs. You got, whether it's a fullback or a running back playing the fullback, you got your two wings, and then you've got backups. So the rotation, I knew that I could be in the rotation and at least get the varsity letter, but I didn't think that I'd be able to start. I forget what happened, how it started. He's actually a friend of mine. They moved him to fullback, and they put me at wing back, so we can do our thing. But looking at, we had the rivals with Harding, we had the rivals with Howland. Those were the two main rivals. I wouldn't even consider Harding a rival because I haven't beat them jokers since like 8th grade. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not a rivalry until you get a win. Now, Howland was a real rivalry, but I knew, because when did they combined junior year, Harding did, Harding and reserve. And so I knew that I could play because I played well in that game. And the oldest brother I mentioned, he lived in Warren. And so I used to play on the playground with those kids. Like they were from Trumbull homes. They were in the projects. So I used to hang out and play with those kids. I didn't know who I was playing with, but when I got to high school, my brother was like, "Yeah, you used to play with him up the street. They all grew up here. I know them." And so my brother told me, he was talking trash to them, like, "My little brother gonna kill y'all. Like y'all might beat him, but my little brother gonna get his." And I'll never forget just playing against that caliber of athletes where, a lot of those guys on that championship team could have played college ball. Some of them didn't go on the path that we had, but they could have certainly played college ball. And that's when I learned and realized, like, you can play this game at a high level, no matter how big or small I was or was not. I realized that gave me a lot of confidence playing against that Warren Harding team because they dominated everybody.
Yeah, when I'm looking at some of the clips that I showed you, I pay attention to details that other people may not be looking at. So like, I'm seeing Omar Provit give you the pat on the back. Man, that last clip that I showed you, the reason why I pulled it, because it says a lot about your competitive spirit. That you and Corey Stringer are banging face mask to face mask. And at that time, he had to outweigh you by at least 90, 200 pounds, and there's no fear. You get a collision, he gets a collision, but that team is laced with big time recruits, LaShawn Daniels, Strawn Watley, Anthony Morgan. You talk about guys like Myron Elsie. That's not easy to go over there and just play if you got a whole bunch of people with you. But when you're outmatched, outweighed, and you guys are just getting out there and getting after it because of the proximity of the two cities, it shows up on the film. There's a lot of respect that's given on both sides of the ball there.
Yeah, that Corey was probably 275, 280. I was probably like 145 pounds back then. And you mentioned two names, Corey and LaShawn. They both, and I tell this story to everybody that will listen, they both went to Ohio State together. They both went to freaking Minnesota Vikings together. Like, how good do you think that team was? And then they had, Tico Powell and Omar Provit and Kendall Richardson. Like, they had killers. And then behind them, you talk about Anthony Morgan and Strawn Watley. Like, they were like 4 deep, and their 4th string could beat most first strings in the area. And so when they when I had friendships with Sean Ziegler, some of the seniors, because when they combined the seniors and they, as you mentioned, pat me on the back, and I earned their respect. And it wasn't because I knew them through my brother. They told my brother, they're like, yo, we tried to kill your brother because you was talking so much trash. And I tell you, he tough. He stayed in the game. And I got player of the week, the little McDonald's player of the week thing that they do in the neighborhood. But that was the one that gave me the confidence that I can't be touched. But it was also a detriment because I thought I was that dude, even though we had Sylvester Patton in the area. We had other running backs. I remember Tom Palucci ran for a lot of yards, played at Youngstown. Like there were other guys in the neighborhood that were, or in the area that were bigger, faster, and stronger than me. And so as I got older and graduated college and started doing the NFL route, it's like, who would you want to invest money in? And that's what college is. Like these coaches have jobs. Are you going to invest in a 150-pound kid that looks good on film, but can he take the pounding of 280 pounders hitting them all the time? And so I'm not mad at colleges, some of the smaller D1 schools that invited me to walk on. At that age, I was frustrated because you couldn't tell me I wasn't the best running back in the country. But that's how we all think.
Yeah, I agree. You when you're that young and you only have a certain view, and it's usually a self-centered view when you're, a high school guy, a junior high guy, especially if you've been in an environment where you've been at the top of the pecking order. Your mind doesn't allow you to even consider that there's other people doing the same thing that you're doing all around the country. And they may have been blessed with a few more inches, a dozen more pounds, and, a few tenths of a second off of their 40 time. But, one of the things is, that heart can't be measured, that work ethic can't be measured.
Yes,
But, I always feel like you end up where the universe is really positioning you to be in for whatever reason. It just isn't in the cards for some of us to get to that next level and be professionals, because in all honesty, some of the guys that we've talked to previously that have gotten that chance and that experience, the one theme that kind of comes from that is, professional sports it's not about fun. You know what I mean? It's your job, and as fans, we tend to think of the glitz and the glamour that comes with it and the cachet that comes with it. But it's really just a big marketing tool, because now in my own family, my own father was a professional athlete. A couple uncles were professional athletes, albeit in a different sport. But you pick up some of those keys to, when you play professionally, that means you have to play definitely on the days when you don't want to, because your paycheck's tied to it or your contract's tied to it. And then it's that behind the scenes stuff that no one really gets to see, hey, you need to take this shot so you can be ready for Sunday. We're going to postpone surgery, so you can finish out the season because you have incentives tied to your stats and totals, so I guess, like the older people say, sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for,
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Talking into some of the others, like Howland was a real rivalry because we it'd go back and forth. They had good teams. We had great players. Like my 7th and 8th grade year, we never lost. And so unfortunately, life happens, teenagers make decisions. And so the makeup of those teams looked different as we got older. Because when I was in 7th grade, the 8th grade team was undefeated as well. And so when we were juniors, we thought we were about to blow everybody out. But of course, other kids grow, and the big kids stayed the same size. And then, of course, there's teenagers being teenagers, whether it's alcohol or recreational drug usage, and then violating, coach's guidelines. Like we had a kid walk out of the weight room because coach said no earrings and to cut his hair. And the kid was like, I'm not cutting my hair. And he walked out. And he was one of my linemen from 7th and 8th grade. And I'm like, bro, I need you. Where are you going? And I'm like, coach, can't we rethink this? And so we lost a lot of guys based on that, lack of team and that individual, instinct of I'm not, you're not changing me. Not understanding that when we get into the real world, you're gonna have to cut your hair. You're gonna have to hide your tattoos. You're gonna have to groom your facial hair. You're gonna have to do those things. So, at Niles, they were preparing us to be men. Did they communicate it the best way? Probably not. Like they could have sat the young man down to, like, before you walk out on this dream, understand what you're giving up, because he's not doing so well in his long-term life 30 years later. And I think that if he would have stayed on that football path, things would have worked out probably a little more positively for him.
Yeah. Now, when you say that, the earring thing and the haircut thing, like we didn't have the haircut implementation, but coach definitely made it known that earrings and tattoos were just looked at as he would call it, gutter. If you had a piercing, there wasn't anything he could do about you getting it, but what he could do was say, hey, put this ridiculous piece of masking tape over top of it when you're in my weight room, so he was sending the message that we're gonna present ourselves a certain way, and we're gonna project yourself a certain way, because people are looking at you and they're judging each one of you as a collective based on what's allowed and what's not allowed. So I definitely get that that level of discipline that's trying to be instilled at that time period. It's not for everybody, and then as a coach, sometimes you want to weed out those guys that aren't receptive to that teaching early on, because that's going to show up in the heat of a game. Somebody's going to get tired of getting, knocked down, juke, run over, and they're going to quit on you in the heat of the battle. So I think sometimes you do got to let those guys go and just work with what you have, whatever that is.
Yeah, 100%.
What's my coach says, his phrase, and he got it from his coach, was stick and stay, and it will pay, and it's true, because all the guys that I came through there with, we had been friends since the early elementary years, first, second grade, kindergarten, in some cases, preschool. And what backgrounds guys come from, what their home life is like. Some of us have the 2-parent household. Some of us don't have the father in the home. Some of us live in rougher areas than the others. Some have more advantages. So, when we all put that uniform on, it says the same thing on the front of the jersey. The helmets look the same, but when those lights go off and the game is over, you're going back to some different situations, and everybody's situation isn't positive. Everyone's situation isn't nurturing and loving. So, you get different personalities, you get different types of guys coming with different types of attitudes, values, and morals from their upbringing and their environment. And, I think that position of coach, in those positions, you have a big opportunity to make or break a kid, at that age.
Yeah, no question.
This game in Highland, 1992,
man.
35-27 win, 24 carries for 330 yards. Take me back to that. I want to know what that's like.
Let me tell you that. I don't know what it was. I was in the zone. And so now that we're older, I can tell a story. We were playing Woodrow Wilson the week before. And so Wilson, they didn't field they had good athletes, but they didn't have the best teams. And so the week of the Wilson game, I went to a party out in Holland and ran in some trouble. And I ended up having a deep thigh bruise, and it made me miss the Wilson game. And so Howland wasn't sure if I could play or not. And so the story for me, my basketball coach was from Howland. And after that game, he was like, Rich, thanks for getting me in trouble. Because the football coach asked him, hey, how's Lemon doing? And I was still hurt. And I told coach, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna be able to do. But something happened that day where, whether it was the grace of God saying, boom, heal this young man, I felt 100%. And I'll never forget, in pregame, I was still nervous because I felt good, but I wasn't sure. And I wasn't really pressing myself during pregame. And the coach goes down the line and he's looking at everybody's faces. And he looks in my eyes and he's like, you ain't ready to play. And I snapped. I blacked out on him. I was like, what? Like, I ain't ready to play. Okay, bro, I'm going to show you who ain't ready to play. And so it was just, it was just an amazing, 48, 60 minutes of just getting down. And I felt untouchable. Every time I touched the ball, I thought I could take it to the house. I mean, and you can talk to Pat, and I know you've had him on the show. Every time we touch it, we want to take it to the house. But in this game, I legit thought I had an opportunity every time I touched that ball to take it. And I want to say I had 2 touchdowns that were over 50 yards, and then I got a game sealing pick, and so that 300-yard game it's a special one. And the crazy thing is, I don't have it. Like, I reach out to my friends, nobody has that game. And I don't have it. So I don't have it in the library where I could show anybody like, yo, I ran for 300, check it out. Because we don't have, like, back then, now we have social media. It would be all over the place. I could just Google that thing and pull it up. I can't find it. So if you got connects, let me know, because I'd love to see that game, 30 years later and see what I really accomplished. Because while I was in the moment, I was just doing what I do. You call my number, I'm gonna deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's probably out there somewhere, but with that VHS era, a lot of that stuff just gets chewed up over the years, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't survive. So when you get a clip of something, you just treasure it so much because you're like, man, I haven't seen this in forever, But
Yeah.
I'm certain somebody somewhere they have to have that information and those images and that footage.
Tell your listeners to get at me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's cool, man, because we played that same Howland team the last game of the season that year. So, I understand like who was out there, who you going against. The guy Burke, I believe it is, that he ended up going to Michigan State.
Yep.
Who knew he was going to be as dynamic
Right.
as he became. And then I know the year before, I remember Willie Fant taking a long run down the sideline against us, and I forget the kid's name, the 92 season, but he was a tall, slender guy, running back. Yeah, I believe that's
Daniel was
correct.
a receiver. Daniel was a receiver.
Well, we had only given up one other touchdown pass in 2 years, and he was the one that got it on us, and it was the last game of the regular season. Is kind of like, I can't believe that you gave up a touchdown pass to these guys out here. But you look back and you think about some of the different places that you pop in and out of, just traveling around, testing yourself. You're getting a little bit of insight and just tools of navigation on how to deal with and function in this wider world than what is your 6 blocks or your side of town or your little area of this part of your state. When you are finished with your high school career and you start making that choice in terms of what you're going to do at the next level, what were some of the things that were offerings for you, or places that you may have wanted to go before ultimately getting that opportunity at Bucknell?
Shoot, man, that as we chatted, that first offer came from Penn State. Well, the first interest letter came from Penn State. And so I was excited. I was like, wow, somebody does believe in me. I can play ball at this level. But, again, size matters. Penn State had Mike Archie. When we were seniors, Mike Archie was a freshman. One of his coaches was a teacher at Niles and told me about him. And in high school, Mike was running for like 200 yards every game. And so, you know, us, you know, we get an interest letter. I go straight to the running backs and the media guy. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this that dude from Sharon, Pennsylvania. Like, man, and Mike was probably what, 5'10", 200 pounds. And I'm like, here I am. You know, I tell everybody I'm 5'8", but when I got measured for the pro day, I was 5'7 3/4, but I'm still 5'8". But I was like 160 pounds. Like, how can I compete with this dude? And when we went to the spring game, my brother took me, and we went as a family. And I was just like, wow, you know, Penn State's not an option. But I really thought that I could play D1 ball. Of course, some of the MAC schools, Toledo was a school that I really garnered a lot of interest in. And I was, you know, I thought I was going to go to Toledo, but they invited me to walk on. Later learned that Mark Heron and your boy Sylvester Patton were going. I'm like, oh, Sylvester took my spot. Like, I need to holler at that brother, you know. And so after that, it was all little schools. It was all D3, NAIA, Westminster, right up the road, you know, the Slippery Rocks, all the small schools had interest, Oberlin College, Denison, but you know, that child ego was in the way. And I was like, I'm better than this. Like, you know, it takes a lot for, you know, for you to be a student athlete at the college level. And so like, but I just felt that my skill set garnered the attention of a D1 program. And if I couldn't play D1, I just wasn't going to do it because mom didn't have money. I wasn't going to walk on to any of the bigger schools that wanted me to walk on. Like, I've proven that I could play the game. And so I was essentially going to go to Johns Hopkins. And my guidance counselor, Dottie Fogel, who I'm still in touch with, she brought she mentioned Bucknell to me, and I'd never heard of Bucknell in my life. Didn't know what it was, didn't know what type of school it was, didn't know the enrollment, didn't know the location, didn't know anything. And so she brought it up. She had mentioned that her daughter's friend, who was a reserve graduate, you know, and it was like during the Christmas time because it was basketball season, that she would ask him, you know, how the football team was doing and, you know, have him come meet me just so it opened up another door for me to potentially, you know, seek the avenue of playing college ball. Because I was going to go to Johns Hopkins, man. I was like, I guess football dream ends now. I'm just not going to do it. But Lenny Redmond came, and Lenny's still in the area too. And so Lenny Redmond came to the basketball game and was like, if you're as good in football as you are in basketball, and I wasn't that good in basketball, and he was like, you could play at Bucknell. And I was like, man, basketball's my passion. It's my favorite sport, but football's my gift. And so if you saying that, I'm interested in Bucknell just by that. I knew it was an academic institution after doing my research and having that deeper discussion with Mrs. Fogel. And like literally a week and a half later, Dick Riley, my recruiter, came in and we had a great conversation. And he was like, we want to make an offer. And I'm like, you haven't seen anything. Like, how are you making me an offer and guaranteeing me that I'm not going to pay? You know, like Bucknell's a financial aid institution. They don't give athletic scholarships. But he sat in that office and told me that he didn't care, that they had what they referred to as talent grants. And so the more talented you are, the bigger the grant you get. You know, he didn't know mom didn't have no money. He just said, we'll give you a talent grant. And that's how it started. And I went to Bucknell spring game, and my brother told me, the same brother, you can't play here. Little dudes, because there was a crackback block on special teams. Little dudes smaller than me blasted a cat. He was like, little dudes hitting like that? You can't play here either. You need to pick another school. We might need to go to Oberlin or Denison or one of the other smaller schools. And I was like, nah, this is gonna be the school I go to. I get an opportunity because Bucknell plays like when I was in school, we played William and Mary, you know, playoff team, Hofstra playoff team. Wayne Corbett was on that Hofstra team that we played. We played at Ivy League schools, and people don't understand. We played UPenn when they were in the midst of like a 24-game win streak, which was the longest in college football, no matter what division. And so it's some good football up there. It's some good football in the Northeast.
A lot because you know, especially during our time, you know, it's so hard to get on television if you're not in those blue blood lanes, you know. So when you're starting to travel around and expand and compete against guys from areas that you may have never even thought about even driving through, you know, you realize like there's different brands of football, different mentalities, but you really run into some special people over the course of that 4 years where it's like, man, this guy shouldn't even be here at this level, with me, or he really should be over here, because some of our schools end up just being landing pads for guys who either blew their opportunity somewhere bigger, or
Yeah.
uh, you know slipped through the cracks, because even in that PSAC, we had dynamic individuals, maybe not in droves, but there were plenty of guys that it's like he could have played anywhere he wanted to. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, some of the
Yeah.
guys that transferred there, they started at some of those big time institutions, and then when you're measuring yourself against them in practice, you're like, okay, I can hold my own against him. He was able to hold his own wherever he came from. So that gives you some of that confirmation. And I always got up when we did get to play a level up against a 1AA, or we played University of Buffalo during their transition year to D1. So, some of those questions that you have in your head, could you have done something at a higher level? It was good to get that answer and that confirmation and realize, okay, I'm here where I'm at for a reason, but I
Yeah.
definitely could have held my own there too, and
Yeah.
cream is gonna rise to the top. I don't care where you put
All the
it.
time. All the time.
If you got that thing inside of your chest, and that mentality and that stick to itiveness, it's going to show at some point. And,
Yeah.
at this age, you kind of just realize we were fortunate to have a place to display our talent, because
Absolutely.
it's going to
Absolutely.
end at some point,
Yeah.
Um,
Always.
now you get there and you rewrite the record books at Bucknell, starting as a freshman, great year. Uh, the numbers that you put up are, they're video game like. I think, if I'm correct, when by the time you left Bucknell, you were within range of breaking the 1AA rushing record all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I was. I was. When I got, as I mentioned, I was 6 of 6. And so I remember my recruiting host, and him and I just chat, and we've gotten really close. And I told him, after just surveying the land of me being 6 out of 6, I knew that I felt, I won't say I knew, I felt that I was better than the guys in front of me. And so I told him, I was like, I don't want to wish any ill will on nobody, but playing, when you miss a practice, you fall in the depth chart. And so I was like, the only way I'm going to get in that first team huddle is for guys to, tweak a hamstring, or, turn an ankle, or, bruise their shoulder, and not have the heart to push through like us. You kind of mentioned my mom taught me to be resilient. I had the same bumps and bruises that they had, but I had a goal that I wanted to play. I wanted to play as a freshman. I actually just wanted to be on the bus. I wanted to make the travel bus, and I was making the bus as a special teams player returner. But dudes just started dropping, man. And I was on the purple team. That you have like your white huddle, your blue huddle. This is typically the school colors, and we had white, blue, orange, and my huddle was the purple huddle. And I'm like, where, how am I on the purple team? Like, can't we come up with something different? And so a friend of mine, we were in that purple huddle together. He ended up moving to defense. And when guys started falling off, I started moving up. And when I got my shot in the blue huddle, which was a second team huddle, I was like, I'm here. Like, I'm definitely on the bus. I'm here. And then the first teamer, he's from Ohio as well. And he was a good dude. He was a senior, and he hadn't started. He was just the incumbent because he was the only one with playing time that was on the team as a running back. One of the other reasons why I wanted to play at Bucknell, because even though there was competition, there wasn't any tenured competition, and so it was like, may the best man win. And so he ended up getting a hip pointer. He could have played, but it's kind of like when we're looking at the NBA playoffs now, and regular season or playoffs. If it was playoffs, he'd have played. But if it's regular season, go ahead and sit that game out. And so they sat him out. And fortunate enough for me, we played a Division II school, Bloomsburg, like 30, 45 minutes from Bucknell. and I was fortunate. I put it on them. I ended up, I want to say I had like 32 carries. Like I had 100 yards at halftime, and they were like, "Yo, who is this kid?"
Right, like, and I say it. I don't know if you could ever measure it, but it just seems to hold true. Like the area we come from, it's hard to keep us off the field. Like,
Yeah,
and
man.
I say that because our brand of football, where we're from, you're not a tailback, you're not a quarterback, you're just really a football player,
Yep.
because even
Yep.
if you play tailback, you're probably going to play some defensive position. Even if you
Yeah.
are the quarterback, a lot of guys go both ways, play
Yep.
special teams,
Yep.
and then you come up, like you said, competing in the neighborhood against older guys. So, we're not like the Texas, the Floridas, Californias, where guys get to specialize their whole
Right.
life growing up doing one thing. So it's like, okay, when we get to these camps, we get these opportunities. From day one, we're coming in the door, surveying the landscape. Like, where's the
Yes,
weak
sir.
link? Where can I get on the field?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I see that guy doesn't know what he's supposed to do on his rep. Uh, I'm gonna go slide next to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
When this guy is coming towards me, oh, he's supposed to be the best guy on that side of the ball. I'm about to tear his head off. We
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
want that chance, that opportunity, and then once it's granted to us, then the mentality flips. Like, I'm never gonna give this up. You're gonna have to pull me up out of here. And sometimes with the college thing, I'm not certain how it was at Bucknell, but I know where we were, it was ultra competitive. So, okay, you're the starter this week, but next week, depending on who we're playing, what the game plan is, what the needs are, or how you performed last week, your job's up for grabs
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
just this constant cycle of, you know, I have to prove myself. I have to make
Yep.
sure I'm not making myself vulnerable for somebody else to do what I just did to this guy. So
Yeah.
you just have that drive inside of you to make sure that nobody gets your spot. And then, if you do lose your spot for this reason or that reason, you don't sulk because that man worked to get your spot, but
Yeah.
you survey the landscape again and go, all right, who's slipping this week? I gotta
Yeah.
go slide over here next to him.
Now it's funny you bring that up because after my freshman year, I thought I was locked in, and so recruiting comes in, and next man up, and so one of the guys from New Jersey was on his recruiting trip. Coach introduced me to him and said, "This guy's here. He's going to take your spot." And I shook his hand and I said, "Hey, big dog, you're not gonna play until I graduate. Like you better go to a different school." Like that's how we grew up. And so I told him and I warned him, and that joker went to Bucknell and we became friends. So I gave him time, but he didn't get time unless I let me get one. Like, and it's like, bro, I told you, like, don't come here. If you want to play, don't come here. You know what I mean? And so it's funny that you bring that up because I was like, ain't nobody getting it. I got mine because people got hurt. Ain't nobody getting it. I'm not built that way. Nobody's getting my spot. And every year somebody would come in and coach be like, he's gonna take your spot. And I'd be like, man, you got me messed up. That's not gonna happen.
So, in making that choice of playing for Bucknell, uh, do you have? Well, I know the position of running back. Ultimately you have to be a runner, to even play
Right.
the position. But certainly there's those other aspects of the position, blocking, pass routes, knowing check downs and where to be in a audible situation. Some of that is new information for high
Yeah.
school level running backs making that
Yeah.
transition. What are those adjustments that you have to make prior to getting the confidence of your coaching staff and just figuring your way out as a college football player?
Man, let me tell you, I was a terrible block. I thought I could block, but I was terrible because I just, at that level, guys are are so cerebral because they know that I'm a little dude, and then back then, and I think it's still legal now, we could cut block. And so I'm chopping dudes down. I used to get jumped, quarterback get sacked. Like one of my favorite plays when I used to do the interviews back in the day, we played Lehigh. It wasn't a championship game, but the winner was basically going to win the championship, and we were losing, and I was missing the robber blitz. Like, you got your offensive tackle making that call. I wasn't hearing the call because the crowd was crazy, and I missed that block for 3 straight quarters. And then we went on the sideline. You do your adjustments, and coaches in my tail, just you got to make that block. And my favorite play is Jim Fox was quarterback, Jim Fox from Struthers. And I heard it. It was like I was locked in, and I read the defense, not as a runner. I read it as I knew we were passing. And I read it, and I was like, oh, here he come. And I'm waiting on my guy Moose to make that call, because if he doesn't make that call, I got to pick up the defensive tackle. And there's no way. And so when he made the call, we slipped, and I picked up, I chopped the dude down, and Foxy hit a dime. We get the first down, we win the game. And so that's like my all-time favorite, because I knew that I had shortfalls or opportunities in regards to I'm not a great blocker. But when the team needed me most, I came through with the block. Like I've made good blocks, but not like some of the other larger running backs that were, bigger and stronger than me. I held my own, but if you look at my blocking percentage, I wasn't that good. But getting that confidence of coach, I had to get better through my 4 years, because they knew they couldn't take me out just on pass plays. And so they put me in, if you remember the pup drills, pass under pressure, I hated those drills because we weren't allowed to cut our teammates, but it made me a better overall football player. With receiver, I used to go as teams started putting 8 in the box, they used to put me in the slot. They used to put me out wide by myself, where I used to do what I call the Omar Provit, the rocket screen, where I can go ahead and get the ball real quick and do my thing. And so I practiced as a runner, as a blocker, as a receiver. And so it was a lot more, similar to how we came up, because we played both ways. So it was nothing for us to be just going into different drills and doing our thing. But at the college level, while I was playing receiver, I was missing some of the running back stuff. While I was doing my blocking education, I was missing some of the receiver and the running back stuff. So it was a tough balance where I had to put in a lot more extra work. I forget what the time stamp is of it, but I used to tell people I was a student first, but I was also an athlete. And even though I didn't have a job, football was my job, and I really wasn't getting paid, even though they paid for my education. I spent roughly 36 hours in football, because you have conditioning, you have weight training, you've got film study, you've got practice, and every day you're doing something while you're managing your books. And so I have a lot of respect for any athlete, whether football, basketball, field hockey, track, like all these athletes dedicate a lot of time to the craft outside of the classroom.
Absolutely. I know when I got to be a senior, eligibility wise, you know, practice was really the release part of my day because
Yeah.
you're dealing with your studies and the anxiety of, man, I want to get out of here on time. I want to get this degree. And then, 4 years into playing, you've kind of gotten to the point where you understand the scheme. You pretty much know every opponent that you're going to play in your league. So you're not as keyed in on the details because you know what to expect. So practice was probably the easiest part of my day as a senior
Yeah.
because I didn't have to think when I was there. I already knew what to do just based on what the call was. When you talk about Jim Fox, certainly I'm very familiar with who he is. got to play against him in '92 as well. Certainly one of the great athletes of our time. Great basketball player, really proficient quarterback.
Yeah.
Had all the tools. What is you guys' relationship like during your time at Bucknell?
Foxy and I are closer now than we were during Bucknell. he didn't get into the starting lineup until his junior year. And so a lot of my relationships were built as a freshman and sophomore, and then those guys left. And so we started getting closer junior year because we were in the same huddle. We were from the same area. I wish I would have known how cool Jim Fox was. Like that's a cool dude, man. And I wish I'd have known. I'm glad I know now. But we've always been super cool, like strong arm, great athlete, tough. I mean, but he's a
Yes.
Youngstown kid. He's hard nosed. I remember him taking a hit on the sideline at Princeton, and it was a knock, and the whole crowd went, "Oh!" And that Joker got up and ran back to the huddle, and I was like, "Yo, you hard as heck, bro! Like you ain't no joke. Like you could ride with me any day." And he had a lot of gifts. I want to say we went to the Giants together, and he fit because he had all of the the physicality,
The
like he had
measurables,
the
yeah.
measurables, yeah.
Yeah.
And so and that was when Jim Fossil was there. And so all these big guys are going in. They've got the little high school style desk, where the chair and the tabletop are connected, and the big boys can't fit in. My little butt, I was all comfortable, like, what's up? And everybody walking in, ducking their head. But him and I, we have a great relationship. When I go home at least once a year, and we try to connect, and we've been going to Bucknell these last couple of years, catching a game, whether it's like alumni weekend or homecoming. And so I'll be home a couple of times this year. So him and I are connect, and we're going to go to a game in Lewisburg. So that's my guy, man. We probably text every couple of weeks. So him and I are super close.
Yeah, I chopped him down at the ankles because
Me too.
the word was that number 12 never runs, and 2 plays into our battle with them, here comes 12, all 6-7 of him running to my side. I'm like, I'm not about to hit this guy straight up, and,
He's a big joker,
chop them
man.
ankles a little bit, and like, all right, I don't think you'll be doing that over here, because I'm going to chop him again if you come back. Can you talk about what you ended up getting your degree in through Bucknell, and then what you ended up transitioning into professionally after that?
What a journey. Because I always wanted to be a doctor, but growing up how we grew up, I didn't know the plethora of doctors that they have. The different types of doctors, whether it's surgeon, optometrist, gynecologist, whatever. And so I thought I was going to be a doctor. Went to an engineering school, so I kind of combined into biomedical engineering. Where I do my science, I do my math. And so I went from the engineering program to like electrical engineering. And then I changed to accounting, because we're low income. So I was focused on, careers that pay. Like I didn't care about what I did. I thought I was smart. I thought I could learn anything. I thought I could be good at it because, as I mentioned, I want to be the best at anything I touch. And so went from accounting to like marketing, and then marketing to like management. And I graduated with business management. The beauty is I still graduated in 4 years because everything I was doing satisfied other parts of the curriculum. Like I satisfied my science, I satisfied my math. It's just when I became a senior, I didn't get any electorals. I couldn't do any of, some of the, like I had a teammate that did dance, and, a couple of teammates that did music and art. I didn't get any of those classes. Like I was a student, doing, chasing my degree the entire time. I was a part of a program in my junior year. It was titled the Institute for Leadership and Technology and Management. And that partnered me with an internship at IBM. And so my first job out of college, was working at IBM in sales capacity. And I was the second, when I interned, that was the first time in 25 years that IBM hired, new college graduates, like university hires. And so I was that second university hire group, and stayed with IBM for about 6 years, and then transitioned to right after 9/11, TSA was inaugurated by President Bush. And so I worked on that TSA project with Homeland Security for about 5 more years as a project manager. Got to see, how beautiful our country is, places like Omaha, Nebraska, man. It's a lot of brothers in Omaha.
Nice.
Rough Riders was in Omaha, man. Like I was like, yo, Dragon and everybody. I was like, wow, Omaha, Nebraska, get down. Did the TSA thing for a few years, and then I transitioned to Walmart because TSA was a contract. And so once that ended, I transitioned into Walmart, was a co-manager in some of the stores. I tell you, some brilliant store managers out there. My Walmart was 200,000 square feet, and it was a $100 million entity. And so those are like legit business owners that are running those Walmarts. So much respect to my Walmart colleagues. And Walmart kind of, I'm divorced now, and Walmart kind of put a strain on the marriage because I was working overnight. And when I was home, wifey wasn't. When she was home, I wasn't. We had a newborn child, and she was basically a single mom, even though I was in the home. And so I made a transition to Home Depot, going back to the corporate life. But at that point, it was, a little too late. The marriage was still a little bit too strained, and we couldn't recover. And now, actually, it's funny how life happens. I've been with Amazon the last 6 years. And just the other day, I've been contacted. They're doing a workforce reduction. So I just got laid off, but I spent the last 6 years with Amazon as a lead recruiter and over several parts of the country, but most recently Greater New England and New York City, or New York Metro. And I was just recruiting for the warehouse leaders, area managers, operations managers, changing people's lives because if you look, Amazon pays well, and so I'm the recruiter that would call you and be like, "Hey, Mr. Allen, I got an opportunity for you. Want to offer you this 100,000 and give you some stock and give you a signing bonus." Like, what companies are giving signing bonuses in 2023? Like, Amazon is great. So now it's like you got one more down, and I'm calling turnover on downs. Next play for me. I'm gonna take probably about 30 days. I'm coming home for Mother's Day weekend. I'm gonna visit my mom's grave, hang out with Mrs. Fogel, hang out with my brother. We've got our 30-year reunion at the end of July. Bucknell has a golf tournament July 14th, so I always come home, pick up my brother, and then we drive over. I don't know if Foxy's going to make it with us. I think he's got a family vacation, but I'll be home several times this year. And so because I have all this vacation planned, I wasn't planning on being laid off, but now I'm just going to like chill out for about a month and a half, and then just get into the grind. I've already reached out to my network, let everybody know that I was impacted by the most recent layoff. So I've got people out there, so I'm passively job seeking, but finding a job is a full-time job. But I don't want to be like, "Hey, Mr. Allen, can you hire me? Oh, by the way, I can't be in on May 13th. I can't be in on July 14th. I can't be in on July 30th. I've got all these plans. So I'm going to just do my thing passively, line some stuff up because I've done the corporate, the sales, I've done the training, I've done the HR, I've done government, I've done public, I've done it all. So my network is vast. I've got a lot of good people, blessed and fortunate to have a lot of good people in my life that will look out for me and open up some doors. And so, the Amazon door closed, great 6 years. They get a bad rap for how they navigate their business, but they're top notch for a reason. And unfortunately, my time is up, but you know how we're built. What's next? Like, I'm ready for that next
A
opportunity.
chance to discover something new.
Yep,
Same
yep.
thing. I've transitioned through many things over the years. Some by choice, others by force. But mom put that resiliency in you
Yeah,
early on, so there's no fear, no reservation. And being the dynamic person that you are, you'll reinvent yourself and reemerge somewhere else.
yeah,
Giving someone else the benefit of your talent and your experience.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the vast amount of yards, carries that you've had, big time experiences, always playing well above, what just the optical view of you is. If you had that one more down, where would that be at for you? Where would you want it to be? Who would you want to be with you? Set that scenario up, what you would be doing and where that would be at.
Man, like my freshman year, I had a lot of trouble fumbling. and I cost us the game on the goal line against Colgate as a freshman with with a lot of great seniors that took me under their wing. So I'd want one more down with them guys on the damn goal line, and like give me the ball. I fumbled in like the second quarter, but it changed the momentum of the game, and we had opportunities to win. We had an untimed down on like the 5-6 yard line, and coach decided to do like a pop pass when I'm in the huddle saying, "Give me the ball." But because I had fumbled earlier in the same situation, coach is like, "He's a freshman, he's not ready for the moment." But he didn't know that I was from Trumbull County and from Northeast Ohio, and I was going to get that thing. And so if I had one more down, I would want to relive it with those guys, because I ended up getting my championship as one of the pictures you displayed. But I owe them a championship, because they were glad that I came to the program and gave them an opportunity to win. Bucknell isn't a storied university from a football program's perspective. We kind of changed that during my era, but the first opportunity to bring or impact that change was with them, and I'd like to just get it back with them. I don't care if it's 4th and 1, 4th and 5. Give me the damn ball with them guys.
Man, I'm so happy that I got a chance to connect with you, man.
Likewise,
You know,
yeah.
the respect that I had for who you were before even having a conversation with you. You know, the confirmation is in what you've stated in this last hour and 15 minutes, man. You tremendous human being, everything that was, as far as you being a football player, it's just outmatched by the individual that comes across in the delivery of your story. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
that chance to come on and give your perspective and your story and your background, man. This is tremendous, and hopefully it helps to spread the vision of what we're trying to do through this format and this platform. So I thank you tremendously.
Nah, man, I appreciate you more. I love doing stuff like this. I love, sharing the story, dropping, a little bit of information that could potentially help others.